brains, brains.
Hi, and welcome to Shadow School. My name is Matt Sandbank. Today we are making zombie puppets. And if you stick around to the end of the video, I'll show you some fun and easy zombie comedy that you can create with your own puppet. Let's get started. Here are the materials you need for this shadow puppet. Alright, let's make a zombie. I've gone ahead and broken down the cereal box. I'm going to go ahead and also actually cut away these side flaps. I like to do that because if you accidentally draw across the puppet onto the side flaps, then part of your puppet's going to be not very solid. It's going to want to pull away from the shadow puppet screen, which doesn't make for a very good shadow. So let's go ahead and cut off all of our flaps so that we're left with just those middle panels of cardboard. All right, for the first part of the zombie, we're going to make the head, body, and one leg. So let's do a nice big head, kind of a big kind of egg shape like that. We'll give a little neck like this. Body goes down there. And then for the leg, let's do a slight bend. That's the upper leg, that's the lower leg, and then let's add a foot like that. Now we need to add some definition to this stick figure. Let's start by doing a nose. For some reason, I think zombies look better with this slightly upturned nose like that. We'll give them a little bit of a lip and then a kind of growling frown here. We're going to make their bottom lip stick out a little bit more than the top one. And we'll come meet right there. Let's give him a little tooth this way too. We did this with the troll as well, and I think it gives that face a little bit more definition. For the eyes of the zombie, you could punch out two holes like this, and that could look good. But I kind of like these eyes that kind of start with these diagonal lines like this and then kind of go down. I like to make one of the eyes kind of smaller than the other. I like that kind of asymmetry. Okay, and then we'll add some meat onto these bones. Let's give him a collar for his shirt and kind of make the shirt go down like that. We could even make the shirt kind of raggedy. Zombies don't take care of their things, so they're kind of have ripped up clothes a lot of times. And then for the leg, we'll kind of go down like this and like this, and then also make a raggedy pant leg that ends a little bit before the foot. We'll put those leg that goes like that, and then for the foot, let's do kind of a rounded heel. Let's say this zombie lost his shoe somewhere, and then kind of a ridge for the feet. That foot's actually quite large. Let's just stop it at the second ridge there, and let's make it a little bigger at the bottom. 2 ridges will be just fine. That will read to the audience as a foot, no problem. All right, before we draw the other parts of the zombie, let's go ahead and cut this part out. I'm going to do a rough cut first, so I don't have as much cardboard that I need to be dealing with. There we go. And I cut with the back end of the scissors close to my fingers because that gives me a lot of control. I do really tiny, small cuts like that, and I steer with my left hand while I'm going. It helps me get into those nooks and crannies without cutting where I don't mean to cut. Everyone wants to jump right into the zombie, but if you're new to cutting, I might recommend trying one of my shadow puppet videos with slightly easier pieces like the worm or the fish. If you're still getting used to cutting, you might not want to try something that has quite this many intricate spots. That said, if you like a challenge or if you just have a lot of practice with cutting already, go for it. Or if you just feel like making a zombie, go for it. The great thing about shadow puppets is you can make a lot of mistakes in the cutting, and the end result, the shadow puppet, can still look really good because it's not just about visual art. It's also about your acting, your voice, the movements you give that that puppet. So the drawing is just the one part, the cutting is just one part. The whole involves the entire performance as well. Ripped up shirt down there. And we're at the final stretch, folks. All right. So this zombie is going to have 2 legs, and they need to be identical. So I'm going to go ahead and trace this leg onto my second piece of cardstock. Now, when you trace a puppet piece to be identical, the line of your tracing ends up being a little bigger than the original piece. So when you cut it out, make sure you add an extra part of that leg there so you have somewhere to attach it. When you cut out, you want to actually cut on the inside of this line, not on the outside of it. That'll make your puppet pieces more identical. So I'm going to line it up so it's going, so I'm taking my scissors out for a ride just on the inside of that line. But don't panic if you end up on the outside of that line for parts of it. It won't make a huge, mega colossal difference. Okay, now I just need to get this little part in here, saving that for last because I don't like doing it. Okay, and let's take a quick look to make sure that those line up and look good. Yes, indeed. Now, when you operate this puppet, these legs are going to want to get stuck on each other. So I'm going to go ahead and try to prevent that at the beginning. I'm not folding this down so that I make a crease. I'm just kind of bending it, kind of training that cardboard away. And I'm going to do this top leg in the opposite direction. That way they have less of a likelihood to snag on one another. Okay, and now we need some arms for this zombie. So let's have his arms kind of sticking out straight ahead of him. Let's start with a kind of a stick figure like we did the rest of the body. That's his upper arm, that's his lower arm. We'll have the top ones kind of coming in the opposite direction. Okay, and now let's add some meat to those bones. Here, I'm going to do it in a different color so it's actually easier for me to see where to cut out. Meat on the bones, raggedy collar for his arms, and let's have those hands sticking out. And let's do this. I like to go kind of up, down here with one finger and another, and then we'll kind of go like that. It's more the suggestion of an arm, or a hand, I should say, rather than a really well-drawn hand, but that's okay. This top arm can be a little thinner than the bottom one because it's supposed to read as being a little farther away in the distance. Not that far, but just a little far, so it doesn't have to be quite as big as the first one. 2 fingers, kind of a little thumb there at the bottom too. I think that'll read pretty well as outstretched arms. And then on this part, we need to add an overlap so we have a place to actually connect this to this. That might be too big. We might have to end up cutting some of that away. All right, let's cut these arms away. And you know what I'm going to do? Okay. So what I notice is when I have puppet pieces that have a lot of blank space in the middle, what I'm going to end up doing is actually taking a piece of tape and joining those 2 arms and actually running tape all the way around here so that those arms aren't bendy, so they have a little more solidness to them. So I'll show you that in just a minute when we get there. I'll probably do that before we attach the pieces of the puppet all together. All right, let's get in there and be really careful at this part because this is where you're most likely to rip your puppet. If you make a small mistaken cut, that's no big deal, but if you rip off an entire part of the puppet, that requires greater efforts to fix, or sometimes even starting over. But even starting over is no disaster, not with shadow puppets. They're relatively quick to make. Okay, There we go. Now, like I said, let's go ahead and take our clear tape and just run that across both of these arms like this. That'll make it a much more stable puppet, and because that tape is sticky, it's going to want to get stuck on the screen of the shadow screen, so you want to make sure you cover up the exposed sticky part like that. Just run your finger to make sure there's no more sticky part, and then where the tape overlaps, I'm just going to cut it away. I'm not concerned with getting into every nook and cranny. I'm going to leave this tape right there. The audience will barely notice that little faint tape line, and it'll help hold this puppet piece together. Okay, great. Now we're ready to put it all together. Let's take our hole puncher. We're going to punch a hole right there to start with. And we're going to hold it up to make sure it's looking right. And we'll place a dot where we're going to punch that hole. We're going to line these feet up so they're exactly one on top of the next. And we're going to put a dot there. And let's punch those holes. Oh, I almost forgot about the eyes. Let's go ahead and cut those out. Okay, cut the one. And I'm going to come in from the other side here with this second eyeball. Now, I'm cutting out here, makes that head really flimsy, so make sure you don't rip that off. And then once you have it all cut out, do that same thing with the tape that I just showed you with the arm. Use that tape to make sure that puppet is held together really well. And that's how you do some of those internal cutouts. You just have to cut in, but then retrace your steps and cover up your tracks with a piece of tape. Okay, let's cut away the extra tape, and then we'll be ready to put this zombie together and unleash mayhem on the shadow puppet screen. Okay. You want the arms and this other leg to actually go on top of the puppet. It doesn't always matter for depending on the puppet, but for this puppet, this zombie will only really work if you have the arms and the spare leg situated on top of the rest of the body of the puppet. Look at my other brad. Here we go. And now we have our zombie. Now to bring it to life, we're going to add some rods. Let me get some straws. If the puppet is flat on the table, you want the straws to be sticking straight up in the air. The first straw you're going to attach with a piece of tape on this leg. You want the bend of the straw to go next to the joint of the leg, and then you lay this piece of tape down. You want to lift that leg up a little bit so you don't accidentally tape this leg to the bottom leg. If you've made your puppet and it's not moving, most likely, I'd say 90% of the time, the reason why is one of your puppet pieces is taped accidentally onto another piece of your puppet. So once you get that straw in there, you want to make sure that leg swings freely. And then for the next straw, you're going to attach that to this arm. You can do either one of the arms. I think it's going to work a little better on this top arm. The bend of the straw is going to go next to the joint of the puppet, and then this straw is going to go right along the length of that arm. Oh. Work with me, tape. Again, make sure you lift up that arm so that you're not taping the arms onto another part of the puppet. And let's get two really good pieces of tape on there so it's really on there. And now you have a zombie. And there you have a zombie shadow puppet. Now, one of the easiest ways to make your audience laugh in a shadow puppet show is to make your puppets trip and fall. And zombies are particularly good at this. Watch what happens when you add a little banana peel to the bottom of your shadow puppet screen. Don't forget to click like and subscribe if you enjoy making these shadow puppets with me. Thank you so much for joining me today at Shadow School. My name is Matt Sandbank, and I will see you next time. Bye.